What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today I thought I'd finally bring you guys an extraction guide since the mode has been out for over 2 weeks. Now, rather than smashing out a guide within the first few days after release, I thought I'd try and get a whole heap of playtime in the new mode, just to make sure I had a good grasp of the best tactics to use. After a few weeks now, I am feeling super confident each time I play. I'm not actually sure what the win ratio would be, but I'd definitely say I win more games than I lose, so I thought I'd share with you guys some of the best tactics to use in extraction, and the most effective ways to help your team come home with the win. So in these guides I am going to split each map up into a separate video. This one's going to focus on Kessel, and then the next one's going to focus on Jabba's Palace, and obviously once they add some new maps into the rotation I'll cover those ones as well. I'm going to touch on the best classes to use and the most effective ways to use them, the best areas on the map to be, as well as just some general tactics on the best ways to make sure you get the win. So getting stuck straight into it as the attacking side on Kessel, you're going to spawn inside the spice mines at the very back of the map, and straight away you'll need to grab the payload from this room where it spawns, and you'll have almost a zigzag pattern where the payload is going to move. This area here is the first checkpoint, so you'll have around 5 minutes to get to this point, and if you fail to do so then you'll lose the game. If you do get it to the checkpoint though, you'll be given another 5 minutes on the clock to get it to the next checkpoint on the map. From here you'll wind your way through this tight area and eventually take it towards the second checkpoint, which is in this hallway, and again once you get it past this point you'll be given 5 more minutes to try and win the game. From here you'll only have one more stop, which is through this doorway outside and onto the Millennium Falcon. Once you get it to this point then you'll win the game, or if you're on defense, once the enemy team gets to this point then you'll lose the game. So back to the first checkpoint, as the attacking team, most of your teammates are going to go straight for the payload to get it moving. So the best tactic that I've found is to actually push up into the middle of the map and try and get a jump on your enemy so that you can try and take out a few to lighten the load for your teammates. I usually like to start the game as the assault class, as I can usually use the Vanguard ability to push a lot further into the map, and the goal here is to try and get behind your enemy so they have no chance of killing you in a proper gunfight. Now what you're seeing here is a perfect example of what you want to try and do. I managed to sneak up behind these guys and they had no idea I was coming from this direction, so there was pretty much no chance that they were going to kill me. Once I got back into the starting area, again rather than jumping on the payload, I decided to try and defend any enemies that were pushing in, so the rest of my teammates were free to carry the payload. Now if you are playing as the assault class, I've definitely got to recommend that you use the scan dart ability as much as possible. Not only is it great for battle points, as you'll get around 100 battle points for each assist, but on such a close quarters map like this then it gives you a crazy advantage, since you can see when enemies are about to come around the corner, and you can just about hold down certain areas on your own with this ability. Now once you get to the first checkpoint, this is where it gets a little harder to push forward. If you have enough battle points, it's definitely best to try and get your hands on a Wookiee warrior. They're so overpowered on maps like this, and the thermal imploder can pretty much clear a hallway of enemies, so they're really well suited to this map and this game mode as well. As soon as you get 3000 battle points then definitely unlock one straight away, and the rocket troopers are also pretty decent too, but they're sometimes a little tricky on this map since it's mainly indoors. Now the first half of this second checkpoint is fairly easy to push through. If you find yourself dying a lot to explosives, then it's a really good idea to use the officer class and equip the diffuser star card. What this does is it actually disables any explosives or stuns within the area of effect when the ability is active. So if you want to try and stop the explosive spam, then this is definitely a good card to use. Once you get towards this last hallway, it's going to get really tight, and again the explosives and blast fire are going to be absolutely chaotic. So another awesome card to use is the squad shield card for the officer class as well. You all know how this works, so I'm not going to go into detail, but if you place it down just in front of the payload, it's going to cover your team for a short period of time while the shield is up. So that's another really good tactic to use if you're struggling to push forward. Again, the Wookiees are perfect for this area. Just throw your thermal imploder up towards the middle of the hallways and either everyone will run away or you'll end up getting a huge multi-kill, and either way it's a win-win for you and your team. Now from here you'll be onto the last checkpoint for the map, and this one is a hell of a lot easier than the first one, so if you make it this far you're looking pretty good to get the win. The best idea is to take one of the side exits rather than exiting through the main door, and once you're outside your only goal really is just to push the enemy back as far as you can so that they can't defend the payload. Now again, I do recommend the Wookiees as much as possible on this last phase, or even the rocket troopers as well, as they are a bit better suited to playing outside, but if you can't use one then I'd recommend either specialist or the officer class for this outside area. If you can manage to keep them behind the Falcon then you're pretty much guaranteed to win the game, so keep that in the back of your mind and just try and push them back as far as possible. So now moving on to the defending side, and again I'd probably recommend either the assault or officer class for this map, and also probably a few of the same star cards that I touched on earlier. Again, the scan dart is an absolute must on Kessel, and especially on the defending side, since you can shoot it towards the payload and locate all the enemies you need to take out to make sure the payload stops progressing forward. Straight from the start of the game, the best place to head is usually just to the first checkpoint. Most people will actually go the other way since it's quicker to get to the enemy spawn, and that's exactly the reason why you should come this way instead. Most of the enemies are going to be distracted by the other teammates who headed over to the left side of the map, so that'll usually leave you with a bit of an easier path, and then once you've pushed up into their spawn to defend the payload, it's going to be even harder as they'll pretty much be covered from all angles. The only real tip I have for this first checkpoint is just to keep on the move. The enemies spawn in the same spot and they'll usually come in waves due to the squad system, but once they've spawned in they'll usually split up if your teammates are suppressing them from the left side of the map, which means easy pickings for you so long as you can stay on your toes. Another tip which is kinda obvious as well, which is to get your hands on the Death Trooper as soon as you possibly can, just the same as how I mentioned with the Wookiee warriors. I actually think the Death Troopers are better than the Wookiees. Their grenade is nowhere near as deadly, but at the same time it will reveal anyone in the general area, so the Sonic Imploder is actually better than the Thermal Detonator most of the time as well. As you can tell in this footage, a Death Trooper on this map is just about unstoppable, and honestly you're nearly guaranteed to go on a 10 plus kill streak at the absolute minimum. However, you can also see here that the one thing you need to look out for is enemy Wookiees. Close up, they're generally going to completely destroy you. At longer range, the Death Trooper probably has the upper hand, but if you're in a close quarters area, all you can really do is run and try and get to a better position. If not, you're most likely going to end up dead. This is a perfect example of what I said about taking the fight at longer range. If you can get the fight at a bit of a longer distance, then you'll usually melt them, so they're by no means unbeatable. Just make sure to keep it as far away as possible. Now for this second checkpoint, I honestly can't really give you any tips other than just to go nuts and try and get as many kills as possible. This area is so close quarters that it's going to be hectic no matter how good or bad either side is. So honestly, the only tip I really have is just to try and get as many kills as you can. And if you do well enough, you'll pretty much stop them from advancing even without trying to play the objective. As for the last phase, it's actually pretty self-explanatory as well, so I won't need to go into too much detail. All you really need to do is just stop them from getting close to the payload, and since it's much more open, you're going to have a bit of an easier time defending this one since you have a much clearer view of the payload. One good tip I have is to get right up amongst the action right here up at the main entrance, and if you use your scan dart and just play it safely, you can honestly take a minute off the clock by yourself just from defending this area, as not many of them are going to be expecting you to be so close to the objective. Really, the same idea from the attacking part of the video goes for this defending part as well. Just try your hardest to take out anyone in sight and it'll go a long way towards getting the win. I don't actually have any in-game footage of this, but one thing I have learned is that if you can get yourself up onto this ledge area on the right side of the map, you're going to have a really good line of sight on the payload, but just remember they can also come from this door as well, so just make sure you're always watching your back and you should be absolutely fine. So that's going to be it for today's extraction guide, guys. Hopefully some of these tips helped a few of you out, and if they did, then make sure to leave a like down below to let me know these tips did help you out. If you have any tips of your own, or if there was any that I missed, then make sure to leave a comment down below. I'm definitely sure there would have been some really handy tips that I didn't mention, so make sure to let us all know down in the comment section. If you're new to the channel, then feel free to subscribe and make sure to turn on your notifications so you don't miss out on any more Battlefront 2 guide videos. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one.